Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of Massachusetts General Hospital, Dr. Peter Slavin.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I would particularly like to thank the co-chairs and committee of this year's 100 for putting together such a wonderful evening. And I'd also want to offer my sincere thanks and congratulations to this year's award recipients. We have already heard tonight compelling stories about our 100 honorees. They are great examples of the significant contributions so many of you in this room have made to advance the fight against cancer and to provide the most effective and compassionate care to patients and their loved ones. While the Cancer Center was officially created only 2 decades ago, our institution has a long-standing history of being in the forefront of cancer care since we opened the nation's first tumor clinic in 1925. We are now the largest hospital provider of cancer services in New England, treating more than 7,000 new patients every year. To serve even more patients and make cancer services more accessible to residents living north of Boston, this past year, Mass General partnered with our colleagues at North Shore Medical Center's Cancer Center and opened an outpatient cancer facility in Danvers. In order to meet this increased demand for cancer services, we have made the Cancer Center a priority as we plan a major institution-wide fundraising campaign. This campaign will be publicly announced this fall, and the Cancer Center is designated as a campaign center of excellence with a goal of raising at least $350 million. With these funds, we will support a state-of-the-art clinical facility, the building for the third century of MGH medicine. All aspects of this new building will have ramifications for our cancer patients, from a new radiation oncology center and an expanded emergency department to new high-tech surgical suites. And there will also be 5 floors of inpatient beds, both acute and critical care, with 3 floors dedicated to patients with cancer, leukemias, and brain tumors. In addition to this new clinical facility, we will raise funds to support the key clinical and research initiatives that Dr. Dan Haber addressed in his remarks. Dr. Haber also shared with you some of the remarkable work that has already been supported and has already gone on thanks to the generous donors to this campaign. Tonight demonstrates the important role that people of all types play in the fight against cancer. This evening, we recognize many of those individuals who make our Cancer Center so successful in advancing our fight against this horrible disease. Others we are honoring are our partners in the search for better treatments and cures for cancer. Cancer patients and survivors, their loved ones, and their caregivers are part of a large community. Cancer results in lives crisscrossing in unpredictable ways. There is fear and sadness in some exchanges, but there is also, as you've heard, hope and connection. One of our significant partners in championing cancer research and accessible health care for all Americans is being honored as one of the 100 this evening. Unfortunately, this healthcare champion is not with us tonight as he passed away last August after a truly heroic battle with brain cancer. The late Senator Edward Kennedy was a friend to Mass General Hospital and the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the people of this country. His commitment to providing health care to the poor and underserved in our community was apparent in his remarks during both the 5th and 10th anniversary celebrations of our community benefits program, now called the Center for Community Health Improvement. His passion for providing all Americans with access to health services was evident throughout his political career. He fought to bring all the resources of our nation to bear on the fight against cancer and other diseases. He obtained additional funding for cancer research that resulted in a much stronger National Cancer Institute. He also co-sponsored the Mammography Quality Standards Act, which ensures that all women have access to quality mammography by requiring all facilities to be inspected and certified by the Food and Drug Administration. He also helped rein in the tobacco industry with legislation that gives the FDA the authority to regulate tobacco products. And he also championed the expansion of the Children's Health Insurance Program with an increase in the tobacco tax. And last but not least, of course, he was the moral force behind this year's historic passage of national health reform, which will make healthcare more affordable and accessible to 32 million Americans. These are just a few examples of what was a decades-long commitment to improving healthcare and access to healthcare in the United States. However, what might not be apparent to many of you was Senator Kennedy's amazing list of larger-than-life accomplishments is the fact that he was truly a compassionate human being who went out of his way to relieve individuals in distress, sometimes one person at a time. And I'd like to share with you one dramatic story of his person-by-person fight for justice and health in this society. During a recent conversation with a Mass General staff member, Matthew Stein, a 30-year-old cancer survivor, and his mother Babette told an inspiring and emotional story about the late Senator Kennedy. When this young man was an infant, in fact, at his birth, he was diagnosed with bilateral Wilms tumor. While Wilms tumor is the most common pediatric kidney cancer, at that time, this cancer was rarely, if ever, diagnosed in a child so young. Matthew's Boston physicians were challenged by both the disease and how best to go about treating it. Matthew's mother, fearing that she might lose her son to this terrible disease, took her then 9-month-old son to visit her family in Washington, D.C. for Thanksgiving. Senator Kennedy happened to be on the same D.C.-bound flight that Wednesday, riding in coach, and so she decided to approach him and tell him about her son's illness. She approached the senator and mentioned that they both had something in common, sons with cancer, and a long conversation ensued. Upon arriving at D.C. airport, Senator Kennedy was swarmed with his staff and other people, while Matthew and Babette proceeded to baggage claim. The senator, however, broke away from the crowd around him and went over to Matthew's mother and gave her the telephone number of his son's Teddy's oncologist, stating that he wanted to be sure that Matthew saw this physician right away. In fact, that very afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving, arrangements were made, and Matthew went with his mother to see this specialist, who in turn consulted with 2 other Wilms tumor specialists in Washington. They came up with a protocol for treatment that avoided the use of radiation, a potentially very harmful treatment for young children. And back in Boston, this new treatment protocol was followed that spared Matthew from radiation and helped to save his life. In telling that story, Matthew's mother noted that this was not the end of their family's exchange and relationship with Senator Kennedy. About a year later, she was attending a political event here in Boston at which Senator Kennedy was also present, and upon seeing her, he immediately crossed the room to where she was standing and said, "It's so nice to see you again. How is Matthew doing?" Babette was not only shocked that this very busy man remembered her, but also was incredibly touched by his caring concern for her son battling cancer. And it gives me a great pleasure at this point to introduce Matthew Stein and his mother Babette, who are here with us tonight, and I'd like them to stand and be recognized. Thank you. So for championing access to health care for all and for his leadership and personal commitment in the fight against cancer, we are proud to honor the late Senator Kennedy as one of the Cancer Center's 2010 100 awardees. Please help me recognize Senator Kennedy. Our featured speaker this evening is no stranger to cancer and certainly no stranger to Senator Kennedy. With his father, Senator Ted Kennedy, by his side, Edward Kennedy Jr. fought bone cancer in the 1970s at the age of 12, losing his leg and enduring numerous chemotherapy treatments. Like his father, Mr. Kennedy has become an advocate for those in need of support, in his case, people with disabilities. Ted Kennedy Jr. is affiliated with Facing the Challenge, where he has served as executive director. Facing the Challenge is a nonprofit that focuses on advocacy and public policy for disability-related issues. He is also a teaching fellow on disability policy at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and is also the founder of the Marwood Group, a healthcare advisory and financial services company that provides services to corporations, trade associations, and institutional investors. He graduated from the University of Connecticut School of Law and has worked with policymakers in the corporate world to expand job opportunities for people with disabilities. So it is my great pleasure, indeed my honor, to turn the podium over to our keynote speaker, Ted Kennedy, Jr.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And thank all of you for asking me to be your special guest speaker this evening. I also would like to welcome my mother, Joan Kennedy, who's here tonight. It's nice to be here with family, and in many ways, I feel like I'm with family here tonight, because the people in this room, many of the people in this room, have stood with me and the rest of my family through some of the toughest challenges that we've encountered in our lives. It really is an honor for me to be asked to be with you today. I just wanted to say how much I admire your commitment to expanding and building upon one of the greatest medical institutions that exists in the world today, Mass General Hospital and their cancer center. And, you know, things like this don't happen by accident. They happen in very few places around the world where the community has gotten together and been able to marshal the necessary resources to make these things happen. And so take it from me, you know, I travel throughout the world and out the country, speaking to different cancer organizations, disability organizations, and what you have here in Boston, at Mass General, is something truly unique and something special. And I think that it's something that you should recognize. I'm going to tell you it's special. And it really, you know, as I mentioned, being here with so many, and tonight just seeing so many people who helped my family in some very, very difficult circumstances. As most of you know, certainly by now, my dad was diagnosed with a rare brain tumor a couple of years ago. We just felt like my dad was in such terrific hands with not just the amazing physicians at Mass General, but the nurses and so many other people. It's been said here tonight already, the collaborative approach that people at Mass General had in approaching this disease, treating my dad not as some cancer patient, but as a person. And it wasn't just because he was Senator Kennedy. It's the same way, the same treatment he got was the same treatment that every single person gets when they walk through the room, the door of that hospital. And it's, you know, this has been a journey that I've also experienced. As the introduction said, as a young boy, I lost my leg to cancer when I was 12 years old. And at the time, I thought that it was the end of the world. I remember my dad coming into my hospital room and telling me that the doctors were going to have to remove part of my leg. And by that, I thought he meant that the doctors would simply have to carve out the swollen part right below my kneecap. And he said, well, not exactly. He said, from the knee down. And I remember how terrified I was by that. And I think what's really unique about the Mass General Cancer Center is they don't just provide unbelievable chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, but they provide comprehensive social and emotional supports for the family. In a way, back in 1973, I was one of the very first people enrolled in a clinical trial of high-dose methotrexate. I was one of the first handful of people here in the U.S. in that trial. But there wasn't a lot of focus, and I had amazing medical care, but there wasn't a big focus on, how I was doing as a patient. And now you have centers like Mass General with music therapists. We recognized a music therapist tonight. There are psychiatrists I'm married to a psychiatrist, so but there are psychiatrists who are on staff. Not because they can cure cancer, but because you take a holistic approach to treating the patient. And we need more of that today. And that is exactly what's going on at Mass General. It really is that I just want to say that one of the other reasons why I'm here tonight is just to say thank you. And when Peter called me and said that, you were having this dinner and that this is a tradition that you do to recognize 100 people, some of them well-known, some of them who are kind of the unsung heroes of the greater Boston cancer community, the main reason why I wanted to be here is again, to acknowledge my gratitude and thanks. For the amazing job and supporting my dad, and also through his many, many years of being a senator here in Massachusetts. He was such a believer in medical technology and innovation. He believed that we needed to spend more money on things like the National Cancer Institute, that we needed to bring more money into MIT and Harvard and places like Mass General to develop the innovations that were going to lead to the new discoveries. And he thought that Massachusetts was the place on the planet where that was going to happen. And thanks to you, he may have gotten a lot of credit for, helping to provide, needed revenues for these things, but obviously it's the brilliant people that have been attracted to Boston. There is a reason why major global pharmaceutical companies and biotechnologies are locating here in Boston, not in other places around the world. They're locating here because of institutions like Mass General and the amazing researchers that are here. And it all feeds on itself to make this place, Massachusetts, the best place you could go, the best place to start a company, the best place to practice medicine. And he really believed in all of his desire to reform the healthcare system. He knew that what happens here in Massachusetts is a unique thing. It really is a unique thing. And I don't know whether it's just the spirit, it's the intelligence of the people, it's a combination of everything. So that's something that I just wanted to convey to you, how grateful he was to work with some of the most amazing people in biomedical research right here in Boston. The other thing I think is important and why my dad would be so honored to be one of the 100 people is because he really believed that you didn't need to become a United States Senator to make a difference in this world. You really didn't. You could be a person who just cared in your own community. And whether it's, organizing a run to raise money for Mass General or starting some sort of awareness campaign of a certain type. The list and the accomplishments of some of these individuals. I just met a young girl here who is 10 years old. Where is she? From New Hampshire? I just met her. Yeah, there she is. You don't need to be a U.S. Senator to make a difference. If this isn't an example, the future of our country, and so that's why I think my dad would be particularly delighted. because, he wasn't, that good at taking credit for things. I think, honestly, that was one of the secrets to his legislative successes, is he really was a very collaborative person yes, he was a liberal Democrat and everybody knew that, but his legislative successes were that he was able to be the master of bipartisan compromise and share recognition and achievement with other people. And he knew that he couldn't do it on his own, that he needed an able staff and many, many, many people that enabled him to do what he did. And, I wondered how it would be, honestly, after he died, how it would be, with people coming up to me and telling me about, what a difference he made in their lives. And, tonight is no exception. There have been so many people who shared with me their stories. And honestly, it is really nice. It is really comforting. And I grew up watching people going up to my cousins and people telling them your father, meaning my Uncle Bobby or Jack, inspired me to go into public service. And I saw them kind of standing there as little kids and not knowing quite what to say, et cetera. And I wondered how that would be for me. And I can just tell you, it really is incredibly moving and emotional, and it makes me incredibly proud of all that my father was able to accomplish with your help. So it's, this is a journey, and even though my father was not successful in that particular fight, he had an incredibly successful life, and he was filled with optimism. Until the day he died, he was optimistic. Not that he didn't understand the odds that he faced, but I think he was an eternal optimist. And I think one of the reasons why people can honor somebody like my dad tonight and can continue to talk about my Uncle Bobby and my Uncle Jack is that, although they were great individuals, which they were, I think what what made them unique and why we're going to still talk about them for years to come is because of what they believed in. And what they believed in was a better future and an optimistic country, and that we need to be fair to everybody, and that was what healthcare reform was all about, that it shouldn't just be the richest people in the country that have access to these technologies. It should be everybody. And that's essentially what he believed in. He was on a mission. He really was. I mean, a lot of people, he talks about it in his book, his faith, his incredible faith that he had, and it wasn't something that we talked about a lot at our home, but he believed that's what he was placed in this world, to try to make life better for other people. And so it really is a tremendous honor to be recognized by such a great place such as Mass General, in a place, Massachusetts, which he loved more than any place. And if he were standing here, he wouldn't be talking about his legislative accomplishments. He'd be talking about all the other people in this room who've, in their own way, have changed the world. And so I'm taking my hat off to all of you to say thank you and keep up the great work you're doing. Thank you so much.